The Florida Panthers eliminate the high-flying offense of the Detroit Red Wings on Thursday night. We discuss how the Florida Panthers did it with going perfect on the PK, Sergei Bobrovsky getting the shutout, and Sasha Barkov playing in his 672nd game.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, November 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. You can subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And if you send in your subscription to the Locked On Florida Panthers YouTube channel, you'll get a chance to win this free hat with the Florida Panthers logo, Amerant Bank on the side, and what it says, the official bank of the Florida Panthers. All you got to do is send in your screenshot of your subscription via DM to me at MondoMan12 or at LO_FLA Panthers on X and on Instagram. So the Florida Panthers go into Detroit, second game of their 3-game road trip, and shut out the Detroit Red Wings 2-0 with after scoreless first for the Florida Panthers. They find a way late in the second period and don't trail and hang on to their lead after that, as the Florida Panthers go 5 for 5 on the PK. 3 straight games now where they have not given up a goal on the penalty kill, and the Florida Panthers are at least going to have a 500 road trip. But it is Friday, so that means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Nick Fairbanks is back, and not only is Nick Fairbanks on the show today, but he is back in his hotel room in Detroit, where he was at the game at Little Caesars Arena live tonight. And Nick, welcome to the show, and very thankful to get an in-person view of this 2-0 shutout win for the Florida Panthers over the Detroit Red Wings, my friend.
Armando, thanks for having me on again. I first have to apologize for my voice because at the end of the second period and into the third, I think that's when I really let it go. But just thankful to get out of there with 2 points, because I felt that Detroit wasn't able really to generate a lot of things. Florida was able to play their game, but in those type of games, it only takes one bounce. So just thankful for the 2 points.
Yeah, and you think about the goal scorers even for the Panthers on this one. Steven Lawrence and Anton Lundell both getting their first of the season, and those guys weren't even the best players on the night for the Florida Panthers. And you think about this game being probably the when it comes to 60-minute games, this was basically the first 60-minute game that the Florida Panthers really had this season. I mean, even though 39 minutes was only played at 5-on-5, 39:01 to be exact, the Florida Panthers did go to the box twice. There was one trip on Kulikov which I disagree with, and then the one in the third period on Gus Forsling as he beat Jake Wallman to the puck after his shot was blocked and all. But still, what the Florida Panthers, the key takeaways for me was how the Florida Panthers performed on the penalty kill. They were getting in the passing lanes. Sergei Bobrovsky was coming up huge, even though Larkin was screening him multiple times. We saw Alex DeBrincat shoot that puck, and Bobrovsky was able to see through and move laterally left and right. There was one close call in this one where there was a shot hit off the post. But hey, when you're having a great night like that, sometimes you count your lucky stars, even on goals that should have been on the night as well. But those are the key takeaways: the PK, the lack of time and space that the Florida Panthers did not give the Detroit Red Wings, and for the Panthers, and it's crazy, Nick. 6 shutouts that Sergei Bobrovsky has. 2 of them, a third, are against the Detroit Red Wings. Not only that, but they come on the same exact day. To this day, 4 years ago, the Florida Panthers defeat the Detroit Red Wings on November 2nd, 2019 in a 4-0 shutout win over Detroit. So, NHL, if you're listening, November 2nd, put Panthers Red Wings, please.
For the near future, at least. But no, you hit the nail on the head. I thought Florida didn't allow a lot of time and space at all during the whole game to Detroit. It was very hard for them to enter the zone, and even when they did, they were not the first on the puck. Florida was. Even on the PK, you could tell that there was a lot of rush passes and not a lot of time for Detroit to really decide what they wanted to do with the puck. So, hats off to the coaching staff to kind of realize that, because Detroit started the season off really hot on the power play, and it was all about puck movement and getting to the open guy. But Florida was in those lanes, and they were making sure that nothing was getting through to Bob, and if they did, Bob was there to cover it, or they were there for an easy clear. So again, this was if you wanted to draw up a game, a game board about defensive play, I think this is the game that you want to look to early in the season.
And I know you weren't watching the TV broadcast because of you being in the building in the game for tonight's game. But there was one quote that really stood out from Steve Goldstein on the broadcast tonight. And he said, most playoff games are played like this. And you think about what the playoff run does for the Florida Panthers. And we spoke about it all throughout the offseason, but now we see it manifested at times throughout this season, and the learning lessons that are taken away from it too. And also the guys who Zito brought in who want to emulate that formula that the Florida Panthers have brought in. I mean, for example, oh my goodness, how great was Gus Forsling tonight? It's especially on the PK. He was the one that stood out to me. Eetu Luostarinen stood out as well as guys who are getting in front of pucks as well. There was one PK. It was the same PK where Alex DeBrincat tried going between the legs on Bob, and in not in the same sequence but different sequences. When the puck gets out of the zone, out of the Panthers zone, even though the Panthers are getting some of their new bodies on the ice, I saw 2 different times where the Florida Panthers were quicker to the pucks in the neutral zone, and the defensemen, whether it was Moritz Seider or Shane Gostisbehere, I believe it was the other one, are a little slower to the puck when it came to that. And I saw both Eetu Luostarinen and Ryan Lomberg quicker to the pucks there and all. And that's a little bit of a tease about something that I want to talk about later in the show. But you think about the effort and how quick the Panthers were. And faceoffs. Let's talk about faceoffs. And especially in their offensive zone and what had them generating so many shots too, and getting those wins, getting it around the boards, winning in the corners as well for this team. And that really made such a big difference tonight.
It really did, and I tweeted it before the game started. I said that Florida either needs to start out fast, kind of like how Detroit has started the season. They came out fast, they were scoring goals early, or they needed to weather the storm. And I felt like Florida took their own game against them, and really took it to them. So, the first 10 minutes was all Florida. You can see the hustle was there. They wanted it more, but there were sometimes where Detroit was definitely laying on the pressure and Florida was making some mistakes. But, as you said, Gus Forsling was probably the best D-man tonight. He was diving for pucks to break up plays and everything. And, he was just very smooth. He was so good tonight that he was actually leading rushes, by himself into the offensive zone and actually almost being successful on a couple of them. So I do want to make a note that, having not seen Oliver Ekman-Larsson live in person before, only watching him on TV, I was actually very impressed with him. I thought he was only a offensive defenseman. Him laying the body a lot tonight and being able to play that, that style, I'm very happy with that acquisition. If he can play like that for 82 games, Zito better lock him up, because that would be a good top 4 defenseman to keep going forward.
Whoa, hot take here on a Thursday night / Friday from Nick Fairbanks on Oliver Ekman-Larsson there. So Wow, wasn't expecting that from you on the night. So before we transition over to segment number 2, Panthers 5 for 5 on the PK, 7 for 7 in their last 3 games. Even though they came into the night last in PK percentage, maybe this game is a big turnaround as far as going up in the ranks. As far as that, they get their 10th straight win against the Detroit Red Wings, and man, the fact that this Atlantic Division, with spoken how tough it is going to be. This is some good early points, and not giving them the opposition a loser point too on the night. That is a big part of getting this win, and for the Florida Panthers getting 2 points on the night. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss our 3 stars of the night. We are going to discuss also when we thought this game was won or lost. In this case, won as well. So we're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Parkview Advance. As a business owner, you realize there are times when receivables might fall behind, but that doesn't mean you need to fall behind on your vendor payments, payroll, or rent. More than 25 years, Parkview Advance has helped businesses secure working capital from $5,000 to $1.5 million. Parkview Advance can improve your working capital in as little as 24 hours. It's a much easier process than you might imagine. We invite the many entrepreneurs that are Locked On NHL fans to learn more about Parkview Advance by calling us at 203-675-0071 or go to parkviewadvance.com. If your business needs working capital, call Parkview Advance today. Parkview Advance, helping businesses with their working capital. Go to parkviewadvance.com. This episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Indeed is a hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Instant Match, Assessment, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed match their job description the moment they sponsor a job. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resume on Indeed match your job description, and you could invite them to apply right away. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/locked-on to start hiring now. Go to Indeed.com/locked-on. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, November 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday, a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So, Nick, I have a little bit I might go in a direction when it comes to when we thought this game was won or lost. I want to start there as far as when we thought it was. And I have 2 specific moments when I thought the game was won for the Panthers in this case. Number 1 was something I mentioned earlier, which when we saw Eetu Luostarinen and Ryan Lomberg in different sequences on one PK were first to the puck in the neutral zone, which just went to show how the Florida Panthers were playing on the night, and is just the effort that was there for the Florida Panthers and the speed that was shown there. And another moment was right before Ryan Lomberg went to the box for cross-checking Daniel Sprong. The really long shift that the fourth line and the third pair had in the middle of the second period. The penalty was at 8:21 of the second period. And the fact that the Detroit Red Wings couldn't capitalize there, and that was basically the most time that we saw all night of them cycling the puck, and they couldn't take advantage. And also shortly after, in that sequence, Bob had an impressive save on Daniel Sprong, reaching out with the leg, lost his stick, and all in all that sequence as well. So those were our two moments, and why those two, and people might be wondering why those two moments when it was a 0-0 game. It just goes to show that eventually the Panthers were going to get their luck later on, and it happened with the Steven Lorentz goal, where Nico Mikkola gets a quick out, and Steven Lorentz shoots, goes off the glove, then off the crossbar, off James Reimer's back and into the net. And of all the chances that the Florida Panthers had on the night, that's the one that goes in. For you, sir, when did you think the game was won or lost? In this case, won for the Panthers.
I think the fact that you brought up, Bob's save without a stick on blocker side, I think that definitely was a developing or a changing moment in the first period, just because Detroit was all over Florida at that point, and you could just feel the energy that it was going to be there. But for me, it was when Bob took a shot right off the helmet. It was like a point blank shot, and Florida was like really, really reeling there, and they had just taken an icing. And he basically took his helmet over to the trainers to give the team some time to check his straps and everything. And he allowed the team to reset and then clear the puck from there. Then they can start getting their four lines going again. So I think that specific little play or that strategy that he pulled there is actually what kind of helped them keep their lead at 1-0.
Yeah, and that was shortly after the Rasmussen shot off the post as well. And the moment that he had on Sprong with the leg without the stick, he also had a save on David Perron as well, and he gets the whistle, and he gets a lucky whistle where the puck was still kind of loose around the crease, but of course when the referee loses it, you have to do your job as far as blowing it and killing it dead. So a little bit of a break for the Florida Panthers on that one when it comes to Bobrovsky and just being a brick wall on the night for the Panthers as well. So just an overall great night for the $10 million man, 10 million reasons for everyone to be happy on the night as well. And 3 stars for me, Bobrovsky, Barkov. I'm going to put Barkov in this category because he was just all over on all 3 zones, lifting opponents' sticks. I know there was that play where he went up the gut through 4 Detroit Red Wings, but looking at the replay, kind of lost a little bit of the handle of the puck, and then as he was passing it back to the point, it went out of the zone. But still, Barkov was extremely active on all 3 zones. And the other one is Gus Forsling for me. And we spoke about earlier how valuable he was on the PK. And just an overall great night for the captain, 672nd game in the Florida Panthers sweater, breaking a record. 650th start for Sergei Bobrovsky in the NHL, 39th career shutout, 6 with the Panthers as well. And Gus Forsling, what more can you say about him on the night as well? And even some other guys who weren't even mentioned. Kevin Stenlund is getting some power play 2 time as well when Matthew Tkachuk isn't double shifting on the power play as well, and all. So that's an honorable mention for me. How about yourself, my friend?
Well, Bob's got to be number 1. He's the sole reason why they won tonight. He kept them in the game in the entirety. Number 2, I'm going to have to go with Gus Forsling. Like I said, he was the best defenseman out there tonight, and they got to pay that man his money. The fact that there was a rumor out there that Kevin Weeks was reporting that both Montour and him were going to be signing extensions, or that they're working on it right now, brought a big smile to my face, because there's been, back and forth of, can they afford them both? I think there is room there. But you got to decide where you're going to cut your corners to make sure that happens. But so I got Bob number 1, I got Forsling number 2, and as much as I hate to say this, James Reimer was number 3. He just gave up his soft goal like he usually did when he played for Florida. Let's be honest here. I was waiting for that. But other than that, he was solid the entire game. He kept Detroit in it, even though they didn't really show up tonight, or they didn't. To me, they just didn't seem like they were playing their game. He kept them in, and he's played fantastic this season. So, hats off to him for making the saves that he needed to. But luckily Florida was able to pull out the win on that one.
Yeah, no doubt. He was definitely stood tall tonight. Also, want to talk about Anton Lundell on the night as well. Uh, had a beautiful opportunity that went off the post early in the game, and then on a 3-on-1, Matthew Tkachuk lifts the puck a little bit of a deflection from Olimata on the 3-on-1, and then Anton Lundell just had a great opportunity to bat it in uh, in the later part of the game as the Florida Panthers were looking to ice it at the time 2-0, and that was right before the Dylan Larkin interference on Sasha Barkov. And the Panthers, think about the different opportunities that they gave themselves to go on the power play when it came to pucks in the neutral zone, when Dylan Larkin hit Aleksander Barkov in the neutral zone when the puck was away, how quick Barkov was to the corner in the Red Wing zone, mind you, while on the penalty kill. And the Detroit Red Wings end their own power play when Sasha Barkov tried to feed to Sam Reinhart, and then Alex DeBrincat hooks him as well. So also got to give credit to some of those guys as well as the Panthers were just getting an opportunity. Yeah, they went 0 for 5 on the power play, but when you look at the performance of Sergei Bobrovsky and what they were able to do on the PK as far as closing in lanes, not much to complain about on the night.
No, definitely not. And, they came close on their first power play, if I remember correctly. I think Lundell had it like basically lined up, and, Reimer made a great save on him. I felt like the Chuck had a few chances, and to me, I think he's still fighting a little bit. I don't know, to be between you and me, I don't know if he's fully 100%. I understand the sternum issues that he had only take about 3 months, but it's also something that can linger longer as far as a pain tolerance kind of thing. So, I hopefully he starts turning it on, but I felt like him and Lundell had rough starts to the game. Lundell almost got caught, giving up a chance. And after that, his positioning was a lot better. He understood where he needed to be. And I think he's starting to form a little bit of mojo with Chuck and also Verhage, which is nice to see.
Hey, and if Matthew Tkachuk was 7 assists now on the season, if that isn't 100% Matthew Tkachuk, then we can only imagine what he would be if he was. And think about how he set up that empty netter with winning that board battle and
Yep.
getting it to Anton Lundell for that sharp angle shot, top shelf as well for Lundell to. And even though he got his chances early, he got it on the empty net as well. So just great overall night on a 60-minute performance for the Florida Panthers. What we can say their first complete 60-minute performance of the season. So we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to move on from this game and talk about the next Florida Panthers game as they will finish their 3-game road trip in Chicago. We're going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. And this time of year, now that Halloween is over, Thanksgiving is approaching, so that means one other thing is approaching, and that is the Christmas season, where sometimes life gets busy. Sometimes you're trying to work really hard in order to get all the gifts you want to for your family. And sometimes it can be a lot on people, and it's natural to feel some sadness and anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. And therapy can be a bright spot amid all the stress and change, something to look forward to make you feel grounded and to give you the tools to manage everything going on. And you could do that all with BetterHelp. And I have personally benefited from using BetterHelp, as it can be stressful during this time of year when you're covering a sport and trying to also be there for your family as well. And all of you out there can definitely benefit from BetterHelp. And if you've benefited from it, make sure you continue using BetterHelp as well. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designated for convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonHL today to get a 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNHL. Third and final segment here on this Friday, November 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday, a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. And Nick, the Florida Panthers, they're finishing off their 3-game road trip against the Chicago Blackhawks at the United Center on Saturday night, 8 p.m. And by the way, the Florida Panthers, they will be practicing tomorrow at 2 p.m. from the Fifth Third Arena, which is the Chicago Blackhawks practice facility. So make sure to keep up there for updates on anything in regards to tomorrow's game as far as roster stuff. But 1-0 last season between the Florida Panthers and the Chicago Blackhawks. We know what last year was all about for Chicago, tanking for Connor Bedard, and they got their wish. But hey, the Florida Panthers are definitely have a little bit of a bright spot for the Chicago Blackhawks as they went into Pittsburgh and got that win to help the Florida Panthers get into the postseason. And we don't expect the Blackhawks to be anywhere near the playoffs, but we do expect to see some growth from young guys like Connor Bedard, of course, number 1 overall pick, and another one, Kevin Korchinski, who was a 7th overall pick, who they traded up. They used the Kirby Doc asset to get Kevin Korchinski. He's definitely a guy who can move on the power play and all as well. They added some guys like Taylor Hall, who's currently on IR right now, and Corey Perry, a tough-nosed guy, gets in your face as well. But this is still a team that is on a rebuild. They're trying to work around their young pieces as well, and have a lot of draft assets coming up in the future still. And they're going to be selling even more at the deadline for what their expiring contracts are. Like we said, 1-1-0 last season. Got goalied last year by Alex Stalock in Chicago very early in the season. Those are one of the losses that really stung the Florida Panthers last year. But do you remember the second matchup, Nick? What happened last season?
Yes, I do. I was actually at that game. Game goes into overtime, and there was a broken play where the puck went to Brandon Montour, and he put it through between his legs. I don't know how he got that shot off, and it went between Mrazek's legs, which was fantastic.
And not only that, in that same game, both Brandon Montour and Sam Bennett had redirections into their own net, and they both made up for it with goals. And one of the craziest back and forth games of the season last year, and that was really in the beginning of March that where we were really seeing the start of Sergei Bobrovsky and his and just getting on the better side of the season as far as being positionally sound and getting ready for the stretch run. That was before the non-COVID illness for the goaltender as well. But hey, that rest definitely benefited him well as the Panthers made it to the Stanley Cup final. But how are you seeing this matchup between the Panthers and the matchup? I just listed off the young guys and the veterans. Oh, I didn't even mention Nick Foligno is also part of the mix for the Chicago Blackhawks there, playing on that top line with Bedard and Kurashev as well.
So this is a game that Florida still needs to take care of business. Chicago's obviously not in it to win it this year. They have a lot of draft capital. I think they're just trying to raise their stock in what they're going to be doing in the next draft or the next couple drafts. But, the big thing that they need to really focus on is not allow Chicago to have the amount of chances that I've seen them have this season. I mean, Bedard, he's got an amazing shot. I know that 1 or 2 of his goals haven't counted this year because of offside plays, but Florida can't afford to have those kind of lapses at all. If they're able to do what they did to Detroit tonight and slow that down in the neutral zone and not really allow them to play in the offensive zone, I think it could be very beneficial. But, if Bob is not playing, then Stolarz needs to come in. And, I was pretty confident after his first start that he could get the job done. But just minimize Bedard. You don't have to worry about Taylor Hall. You have Foligno out there who's going to try and play physical. I think we have plenty of guys that will take care of that, especially the fourth line with everybody being tall besides Mr. Lomberg. And just play a very smart game and don't give Chicago a lot of chances like you did tonight with Detroit with the power plays.
Yeah, and that's also one thing I need to mention. You talk about the Panthers defense botting people up, and it's really showing in what's gone on this season. I mean, do you ever notice how Steve Goldstein on the broadcast, every time he says Nico Mikkola's name, he puts emphasis on the word big on. Oh, that was broken up by big Nico Mikkola every single time, and just the long reach and the benefit that someone like Nico Mikkola has versus a Radko Gudas is that when you have that long reach with using your big frame, whenever you might as well, when you lose a race getting back into your own zone and you have that big size and you don't have to overcommit to one side, you're more than likely able to circle back to the middle of the ice to redirect something if there is a feed there. And that's what a big body like Nico Mikkola does to this team, as well as far as being such a great acquisition as well. And I think that's a really big help for this Florida Panthers team. And like you said, I think that's really going to help on Saturday night against the Chicago Blackhawks, hopefully.
No, it definitely will. And, I have to give credit to the coaching staff and Bill Zito for not only targeting him, but bringing him in because they knew they were going to be without Ekblad. They knew they were going to be without Montour. So how do you want to play defensively? Do you have to change your DNA? You have to change your play style. And Florida definitely has changed their play style. I mean, in a way that is more defensive, but they're still being effective in the offensive zone as far as jumping up on pucks and really making sure that, they apply pressure. But Nico Mikkola has probably been, if not the best defenseman, I would probably say top 2 or 3 outside of Oliver Ekman-Larsson and also Gus Forsling. But, a couple of the Detroit fans, during the game tonight were just telling me, like, Florida's got some big boys. And I'll be honest, it's been a long time since I've heard that. I mean, you see what we have on the third line tonight. You see what we have on the fourth line. And it's just those guys are going to wear you down. You talked about having the reach and not being able to overcommit. Imagine being Alex DeBrincat, trying to be in the offensive zone, trying to dangle and everything like that. And you have a guy who's not even moving and he just has a stick on both sides and being able to basically manage you. So I think down the stretch, that's going to be very helpful, and it's going to make it tougher for teams to actually beat Florida or at least try to win in a 7-game series.
Yeah, and for Florida, that's definitely gonna be a plus as they are still trying to bring what they did in the playoffs over to this regular season, and so far it's working. Alex DeBrincat had 5 shots on the night, and they were able to contain him on the night, and hopefully they're able to contain another superstar in the making of Connor Bedard, and it's gonna be fun. Loved watching Connor Bedard on opening night and during the Frozen Frenzy. And now we actually get to see him against the team that we cover. Now we get to see a full 60 minutes of it. And hopefully that man is contained. And I'll just put my shoulders up if he and put my hands up if he ends up scoring, because that is greatness in the making right there in Chicago. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, as the Florida Panthers complete a 2-0 shutout over the Detroit Red Wings, eliminate their 32nd percent power play on the night, 5 for 5, 7 for 7 in the last 3, and let's keep this going, baby. And tell everybody where they can follow you online.
Armando, thank you for having me on, and thank you for being patient while I got back from the game and everything. But fans, thank you for following along with the game. Definitely tweeted out a lot. But hopefully in the future you'll be able to do that again. I will be at the Blackhawks game in Florida on November 12th. So I'll be tweeting from there, and hopefully we can get on a show, during that. I forget if that's a Sunday or Saturday.
Sunday.
I think it's a Sunday. Yeah, exactly. So maybe
Dolphins
later
bye
in the week. Yeah, exactly. So, but no, everybody can follow me on the X at Prudential0. And again, man, thanks for being patient and having me on again.
Absolutely, my friend. Great to get an in-person perspective from you on tonight's game for sure. So see you next week, my friend.
See you next week.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.